All right, everybody, welcome back to the Nomadic Thrive podcast. And I'm actually filming this for YouTube as well. So if you want to watch along there, you can check out my YouTube channel. The URL is in the show notes. And on today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the thing that is literally on everybody's mind right now, and that is the coronavirus. So I've hesitated making this video or doing this podcast for a really long time because I didn't want to kind of capitalize on any of the terrible stuff that's going on in the world. However, as it's starting to spread worldwide and I get more and more questions from, friends, family, but also from my social followers. If any of you have been following me for a while, you know that I live in China. And so today's episode, I really just want to get into some of the questions that you guys have asked me to, explain what it's like, what are my reality, what does my day-to-day kind of look like living in China right now during this outbreak. So before I really dive in, I want to stress that I am nowhere near the epicenter of this outbreak. And relatively speaking, I've had a pretty easy past few months compared to the people who are in Wuhan and Hubei province. So, first of all, before I get into telling any of my story, I just want to really stress that I can't even imagine what those poor people must be going through. My heart goes out to them, and my thoughts and prayers are with everybody who is there in Wuhan and Hubei and all the terrible stuff that they have to go through right now. So hopefully everything gets wrapped up here soon and we can contain this thing. So in comparison, here in Shanghai, it's been fairly safe and calm, to be honest. As of today, I think there are 338 confirmed cases here in Shanghai with 3 fatalities. So that's, I guess, pretty good comparatively. The good news is there has been no new cases discovered in Shanghai in the last 5 days. So that shows the rate of growth, hopefully, is at least, getting back to somewhat normal here in Shanghai. So from what I've learned in my research during the past month is that the rate of new infections is something that we need to really pay attention to when trying to understand how fast, I guess, the virus, the epidemic is growing and spreading. So it's good news so far. So right now, as of today, it looks like China, at least for the time being, has this epidemic under control. And I hesitate to use that word, but because we don't know what the future is going to hold. But, over the last 3 or 4 or 5 days, we've seen new cases under 200 every day, whereas before we were seeing 3, 4, 5,000. I think one day it was like 10,000 new cases were reported. So, I think although China has been over the last 2 months in the fight, like the fight of its life, most of the rest of the world didn't really have a whole lot to worry about. And of course, then nobody prepared. But now we're seeing outbreaks spike in areas around the globe. As of right now, Korea, Italy, Iran, some in the U.S. now are 3 of the countries where cases are just popping up left and right. And the situation is definitely scary in those countries because it looks like they didn't prepare in the way that China responded. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience of what I went through over the, first 3 or 4 weeks that it really started getting crazy here. And I only share this because I'm getting a lot of questions from friends and family and followers. So I thought I'd make this. And if it helps you, if you're living in a country that is maybe starting to see some cases, maybe some of the things that I did or did not do, could help you. So when this all started, of course, my first major concern was the safety of my wife and children who were in Shanghai at the time that this all broke out. And this was right around Chinese New Year, literally on Chinese New Year Day. I think it really just started getting crazy. And they had basically just returned back from Christmas break in the United States. So they had only been in Shanghai, I guess, probably 3 or 4 weeks before all of the craziness began with this epidemic. So I think the girls had only been to school for like 2 weeks before. So, with so much misinformation, fear mongering, racist comments, in the news that I was kind of, going through, it made it really hard to sift and kind of parse through what was accurate and what was actionable information versus what was just inflammatory noise from rightfully scared people, but still, it was just fear spreading, and it wasn't helping anybody. So, and I have to admit that early on, when this thing started to rapidly grow here in China, I didn't know what to do, to be totally honest with you guys. You know, I always tend to lean towards just deep diving into information. So I'm a reader. I've been an avid reader since I was a child. So I do a lot of research when things are new, or especially when I fear something. So I started looking through old medical journals on SARS and MERS and H1N1 and the HIV/AIDS outbreak in the 1980s, because I wanted to educate myself on similar outbreaks to see what we were doing in China versus what had been done in the past during similar types of epidemics. So while obsessing over this information in the beginning was really great, because I built somewhat of an informed opinion. Again, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a medical personnel of any sort. But I learned helpful things like the R0 number, which I'd never heard of before. And in case you don't know, the R0 number is something that epidemiologists use to determine basically how infectious a virus or another infectious disease is. So the R0 number is how, it's basically, let me try to explain it. It's basically like how many additional people will typically be infected by one carrier. So, as an example, if I have the coronavirus, how many people would, on average, get infected by me? So right now, this virus, the coronavirus, the number is about 2.5. So 2.5 people, on average, will get infected by one carrier. Now, some other famous diseases out there, just for reference, like measles, had a R0 score of 12 to 18. So one person with measles is going to infect somewhere between 12 and 18 additional people. Super contagious, super infectious. Ebola had an R0 score of around 2. SARS was 2 to 5, somewhere in there. And HIV was also, kind of 2 to 5. So right now, again, the COVID-19, as they're calling it, has an R0 number of about 2.5. So what that number means is that, this is really infectious, but it's not super infectious like whooping cough or measles. So, I mean, I guess that's good news. It's still scary. People are still dying. We still don't know a lot about it, and I think that that's what's causing the fear. So as I read and I just accumulated, more knowledge about this situation, I did that so I could make better decisions and react better, for my family's safety. So that was a good thing. However, to be honest, all that information also had a dark side, and I got super stressed out in the beginning, super anxious and irritable. I was having a hard time shutting off my mind at night and relaxing into sleep. I just lay there and worry. Should we go? Should they fly out? Should I fly out? Blah, 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 blah. And, it was a tough couple weeks in the beginning. Now, most of that anxiety time was before we had made the family decision to fly my wife and children back to the U.S. So, I got to be honest, once they were gone and it was just me here, then I calmed down considerably because, at that point, my work hadn't shut down yet when they were still here. So every time I left our apartment, every time I walked out that door, technically I put my wife and kids at risk because they were on lockdown because we'd basically decided, no, you guys aren't going out. So they had been on lockdown for 2 weeks before I then went on lockdown for 2 weeks. So, and what's really strange is, ironically, right now we're actually thinking about how do we get them out of the U.S. where the infections are now spreading and getting them back to China, which might be the safest place to be right now. We'll talk a bit more about that later. So anyways, I accumulated information, so I think that that's something for you out there is definitely read, be informed, but don't go crazy. Don't obsess over all the details because no one really knows, and you're just going to drive yourself crazy. The other thing I did that I think really helped was I stocked up on food, water, and household items. Now I didn't go crazy, but when the news of infections in Wuhan, when it was kind of like the cases were drastically increasing every day. Every day I left work, I would stop by the grocery store and buy as much as I could carry. I did this for 6 or 7 days in a row. We don't have a car here in Shanghai, so everything's we got to do it on foot or by a taxi. But I was avoiding the taxis and the metro, so I was carrying all this stuff. And over 6 or 7 days, I was able to accumulate about a month worth of frozen and canned foods if I needed it. Now, in Shanghai, the epidemic never hit us hard. Grocery stores remained open the entire time, so these provisions, I really didn't end up using much of them. They weren't necessary. But I got to tell you, they made me feel better knowing that I could lock the front door for a month, not worry about eating, and I would be, relatively safe. So, yeah. I think the other good news is when the girls come back, they will have enough refried beans for pretty much unlimited burritos after school for probably a few months. So that's also good news. So, I would say if you want to get prepared, I'd suggest two things. First thing, don't panic. Panic's not going to help you make good decisions at all. And the second thing is what I just said. Invest in some food, frozen, canned food, bottled water if you need that. I don't drink the water here out of the tap in China, just, to protect my stomach from the different bacterias. I know there's a lot of people who are discouraging kind of getting prepared online. They're equating preparation to panic. But don't listen to them. Honestly, don't listen to them. Don't go crazy. Don't go into Costco and, buy too much to where you're looking greedy and you're actually putting others at risk because you've stocked up on more than what you could use. Don't go build a bunker. Don't go dig an underground bunker somewhere. But have some food on hand. Have some water on hand. Just be smart. It's probably not a bad thing just in general to have this stuff, ready for you. The other thing to do to prepare is I think prepare to work remotely and prepare to educate your children if you have children at home remotely. This was a big adjustment for a lot of families who have stayed here in China, if they were expat families or just, the local Chinese people, friends who I work with. It's been a huge, huge challenge to educate their kids remotely. So, what I'm going to predict actually 10 years from now, we will look back on this virus, especially if it continues to grow across the world and people across the world are shut out of their jobs. We will look back 10 years from now and see that this event, this worldwide epidemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it at this point, was when companies truly began to shift towards a work from home movement. And here's why. I think a lot of these companies are going to look around at all this expensive office space after these shutdowns. Some companies were shut down for 5 and 6 weeks here in China. Mine was only shut down for 2 weeks. But I think people are going to look around and say, why are we paying all this rent? Why are we making people, drive themselves in, take the metro, do whatever to get to work, to sit here all together, to work on our computers, basically remote working, and then leave at the end of the day. So I think a lot of companies are going to second guess this in the future. I work for one of the largest companies in the world, and what we were able to do during the shutdown was pretty impressive. So anyhow, shifting gears back more towards kind of like my personal experience here, I've had a lot of questions about what was it like? Like, what is it actually like? And again, guys, I'm not in the epicenter, so please don't think that I'm telling stories from the battlefield because, again, Shanghai's been relatively calm. But the word I keep using most is it's just been weird. Sure, it was scary at times. It's been frustrating at times. But overall, it's just a strange reality that kind of happened overnight. I don't think most people realize how utterly bizarre it is to wear a mask on your face all day in public. It's not comfortable. It makes it hard to breathe. The N95 masks that are like some of the most effective, that they actually irritate my skin around my nose and my eyes. So that's just been weird, and And things like handshakes and hugs and sneezes, I don't think any of us ever really contemplated that one of those things could be dangerous to our health. That a conversation in the elevator with your neighbor, I live in like a 30-story building, that a conversation in an elevator could be lethal to you. I don't think any of us have really spent a whole lot of time thinking about that. So the other thing I've thought a lot about, and what I have shared to friends and family back home, is that in a way I'm glad this happened in China. And that's not because I wish China any ill will at all. Obviously, it's been a tragic loss of life, and it's devastated the economy here. But China is super prepared for these types of things. A lot of that is because of their government structure and their social controls. Now, I'm not advocating for communism. I'm not advocating for restricting free speech. I'm an American. I believe in those things. I'm not going to argue for it. However, I have seen the benefit of a country who can efficiently communicate expectations, communicate, I would say, consequences if you don't follow the rules in this situation. And they were able to do this so fast in comparison to other countries that, at least right now, it looks like China has gotten a handle on containment. So, give you an example. One day the Chinese government says, "Hey, everybody needs to wear a mask tomorrow." The next day, everybody wore a mask. I mean, a city of 26 million people here in Shanghai. I go out on the street, everybody had a mask on. When they decided to lock things down, they said, "Hey guys, everybody stays home." Everybody stayed home. Nobody went out. It was an absolute ghost town on the roads. So, in a way, it's good that this started in a country who can control their population. Now, again, please don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating for that. There's definitely a dark side to that type of government. But, if you think about the U.S., if we tried to do something like this in the U.S., lock things down, there's going to be riots, there's going to be looting. I mean, we burn down cars and riot when sports teams win championships. I mean, think about that. You go and you watch some NBA game and your favorite team wins, and you run out on the street and you celebrate by attacking cars and burning cars in the streets, like what happened in Los Angeles after the Lakers won. So just imagine if people don't get their welfare checks or their Medicare checks in the mail in the United States. What if government offices shut down? You think people are just going to chill at home? Hell no. So, and I think the other thing, not even riots or looting, maybe those are exaggerations, and I admit those might be. But think of it this way: what if people just ignore it? What if people don't loot and riot, but they just go to the mall anyways? They just go out. They go to the movie theater. They go to the bowling alley, right? They don't wear masks. They don't wash their hands. So, in China, and I would say in a neighboring country in Singapore, what we've seen is the rate of infection can be controlled by a very strong and decisive government response. Now, again, Singapore and China are very authoritarian. There are things that I absolutely disagree with on the way the government is structured, especially how they treat their citizens. However, in a situation like this, I gotta say, it works. I mean, it absolutely works. So, we'll see what the future holds. Hopefully other countries can look and take some of the guidance that China has, just been able to kind of cobble together over the last month and learn from it. And hopefully we can get this thing contained, because it's really disruptive. I mean, again, I really want to stress, guys, I'm not saying, and I'm not trying to, sit here and pose as if, I've been in the front lines and, I've been deeply affected by this. Really I haven't. There are people that I follow on Instagram who are in Wuhan right now, and their life is just terrible, crazy, scary. That's not me. I walk to work still every day. I get on the metro at this point. I'm having deliveries at the house. I can go to restaurants if I want to. Pretty much the only thing that hasn't gotten back to normal right now is school, travel, and everybody's wearing masks and washing their hands frantically. And my work hours still are shortened hours and shortened work weeks. But it's really not been that bad for me. However, a lot of people ask questions, so I just thought that I would share some of my experiences. I do want to get into, before I wrap this up, I do want to get into probably one of the major questions that a lot of people ask me, and that is, why didn't you leave? Why'd you stay? And there's two main reasons why I didn't, maybe a third, but two main reasons why I didn't leave, and I'll get into those. But I want to preface it by saying most of my social friends, I've got some people who are friends from work who are all here for the most part, but almost 100%, I think 100% of my social friends have left. They got out, when it started getting crazy right around the time that I flew my wife and kids out. In fact, I think our really good friends left before that. And some of their companies didn't give them that choice, to be honest. Some of them probably would have stayed and kind of rode it out here like me, but their companies evacuated them. So that was strange. That has definitely been strange to where, it's not like I see my social friends every day, but knowing that in a way that you're kind of alone in a sense. I mean, again, I'm 26 million people in the city. I'm not alone, and I do have work friends, but our social friends, my kids' friends, some of the friends my wife has, they're all gone. So for me to decide to stay was really for two reasons, and it was, as funny as it might sound, our dog. So if you follow me on Instagram I don't think I've posted anything on YouTube about the dog. So on Instagram, you've seen Frankie, our dog, and she was a little Chinese street dog that we adopted at this adoption fair that was going on. And we've had her for about probably 5 months now, 5 or 6 months, and she's about 7 or 8 months old. So, she's still a puppy. I don't have anybody to leave her with. Like I said, all of our friends are gone. I don't think it's really appropriate to leave my dog with my work associates or work colleagues, especially any of my employees. It just seems to be kind of a conflict of interest, kind of weird. Obviously, I would have in an emergency, but I'm not going to ask people who work for me to watch my dog while I escape the country and they can't leave. That's just not good, which brings me to my second reason why. But somebody had to stay here and take care of the dog. So honestly, that's why I'm here. That's the major reason. My daughters would never forgive me if I left Frankie here by herself or returned her to the streets. Not that I would do that, but anyways. Second major reason is my responsibility to my career and my job. I have 150 direct reports, people who report directly to me. I'm their boss, and during the shutdown, when my company had shut down, we were still on daily conference calls, pretty much daily conference calls. So then I had to get the information out to the rest of my team, so on and so forth. So if I would have flown out and, kind of left my station, the information would have come to them slower, would have increased their anxiety, their stress, their worry, their uncertainty. So I just didn't think it was the right thing to do for me to kind of cut and run, to be honest. And that might sound strange to some people that I would stay for, a job or a career, but it's really not about the job. It's more about the people who rely on me for information as their leader, in a sense. That might sound a little corny, but it's true. So, those were the two major reasons. The third reason that is like a kind of reason, it's not a real reason because, obviously I could have paid for it, but to be quite frank, when we finally decided to fly my wife and kids out, the tickets were ungodly expensive. So it cost over $3,000 to get them out of Shanghai. I had to fly them to Hong Kong on a one-way ticket, and then another one-way ticket to San Francisco. So I couldn't do like a direct. I couldn't do like a round trip even through the apps. Because they wanted you to like fully immigrate or some. I honestly don't know, but the prices were outrageous, which goes to show you during this shutdown, a lot of companies have been trying to gouge the consumer because, they knew people were fleeing. So now you can get flights back into China pretty cheap and the planes are empty. So that's the good news. So hopefully I will recover some of that expense on the way back when the family comes. So, for me, I was like, do I really want to spend $1,000 to fly back to the U.S., $1,500, leave our dog, leave my job? I wasn't going to do it. So I've been here. The whole time, and it's, for the most part, it's been okay. It's been weird, like I keep saying. That's the word I keep using, is that it has definitely been a weird experience. And I've learned a lot about myself. I've also learned a lot about how to deal with life-threatening situations that aren't clear. What I mean by that is, in an earthquake or maybe a tornado or some other natural disaster, and of course those are horrific events that people lose their life and it's tragic and they lose property and their homes and everything like that. So I'm not trying to minimize those things at all. But at least the threat is definable. You can see a tornado, right? Earthquakes last for a minute, maybe, right? And then maybe some aftershocks over the next few days. Something like a virus, I mean, it's invisible to the naked eye. Anybody can have it. We don't really know how it's spread. We don't really understand the incubation period. We don't understand how long this virus can survive outside of the body, which means if it's stuck to a surface, you can infect yourself even if you're not around people. So I think because of that nature, it's just like this. It's not acute. Like if you see a tornado coming over the horizon, it's coming towards you, there's an acute fear. Like you feel it right away, right? It just like smacks your heart and you run. This is more like a creeping fear. It's like a low-level anxiety. It's just like this constant chronic stress in the background, kind of like a hum in the back of your head. And that's been strange to deal with, quite honestly. And so what I've been doing to cope with a lot of this is I've doubled down on my meditation practice. I don't talk a whole lot about it here on the podcast or my YouTube channel. I guess I touched on it a little bit, but I have been sharing some of my just like meditation statistics from my app on Instagram, just for if anybody's interested. But I've been meditating twice a day. So 15 or 20 minutes in the morning, the same at night before I go to bed. And I do that most days. I think I'm like on day 22 straight of that. And I missed a couple days for some reason, but before that was also, quite a long streak. So, for the last 2 months, I've been really dedicated to it. And it has helped me control my runaway thoughts in situations like this. So, if you've never meditated or if you are, kind of struggling with anxiety right now because of the coronavirus, I would suggest taking some moment to just kind of still your mind. I know some people have an aversion to meditation because they think it is linked to a certain religion like Buddhism or, Hinduism or something like that. It's not necessarily. So, I'm not necessarily a Buddhist or a Hindu or anything like that. I just, have dedicated myself to meditation and mindfulness, and it's helped a lot. So if you guys are dealing with some of this stress right now and the uncertainty of what this virus could or could not do in your home country, then I would suggest taking some time out for yourself to focus on your breath, close your eyes down, and just allow your mind to kind of drift away from itself for a while and just focus on your breath. Don't think about anything. If you lose track of if you lose track of your breath and you get lost in your thoughts, just pull it back. You just keep doing that for 20 minutes. And, when you get up to 30 days or so, then it just becomes, it just becomes a habit, and you just find yourself more able to catch runaway thoughts in the moment. And, I don't know if you guys are like me, but, sometimes when, it's funny, I tend to do this a lot, like when I'm washing dishes for some reason. And I think it's because it's just kind of an automatic thing. You just scrub the dishes and, put them in the dishwasher or whatever. So I find myself, when I'm doing the dishes, is that my mind is just spinning. And what I've found when I consistently practice meditation is that I'm able to catch that runaway train that's going through my mind, and I'm able just to pull myself back to the moment. Or even if I don't pull myself back to the moment and like deeply concentrate on just doing the dishes, then I can at least set the crazy thoughts or the runaway thoughts kind of aside. And I can think about more, just more calming things or more mundane things instead of this obsessive, fear type stuff that can come up during these situations. So anyhow, guys, I'm going to wrap it up for today. So thank you all. Hopefully this was informative to you. Again, I'm just one guy. This is just one experience of 1.4 billion people right now out there in China. And now that it's affecting the world, this is just one story of, 7 billion. So take it for what it's worth. If you don't agree with something I said, that is totally your right. Throw it out. Don't listen to it. But my hope is that some of the things that I've gone through, some of my experiences, some of the things that I've had to deal with over the last 2 months might be able to help you during this worldwide crisis at this point. So As always, guys, thanks for listening. If you want to see what else I'm up to, check out my Instagram, check out my YouTube channel, which this will also be posted on. And you can also check out my website, which is www.nomadicthrive.com. And my Instagram is Michael B as in boy, Mast, Michael B. Mast at Instagram, and Michael B. Mast on YouTube. All of this will be linked in the show notes. You guys can find that stuff there. So as always, thank you. We will talk next time. And please stay safe. Take care of yourself and your family. And I'll talk to you next time.